So I want to thank folks for joining us here. Again, we'll be having a conversation about Dishgamu Humboldt, which is a cutting-edge, Indigenous-led community land trust. When I say cutting edge, I am not being, it's not a talking point. It's not hyperbole. I say that because we have talked with folks at the UCLA Law School. We have talked to folks at the Sustainable Economies Law Center. We've talked to folks at Movement Generation Legal Counsel, and we have talked to people at the Indian Legal Services nationally. And all of them have said that nobody has done precisely what it is that we have done, or that we are in the process of doing together. And here is Michelle. Yay.
Thanks.
So what I was doing, Michelle, was tap dancing a little bit as others were joining us. I was hyping it up and talking about how cutting edge the work that we're doing is. So at this point, we're going to officially begin. And I'll say again, I'm David Cobb. I'm the executive director and a co-founder of Cooperation Humboldt. And it is my extreme pleasure to welcome finally onto the Hop In Michelle Vassel, who serves as the Wiyot Tribal Administrator. Michelle, welcome.
I apologize. I was fully, I could see you and hear you, but I couldn't, nobody could see me or hear me. And it turns out all I had to do is do a refresh and I suddenly appeared.
Well, yay for the refresh, and thank you, Clara, for your assistance. And Michelle, before we dive in, I want to invite you to share with the viewers just what a tribal administrator is, because I don't think that people really fully appreciate the depth or magnitude of your position and what you do.
So a tribal administrator for tribes is equivalent to what a CEO is to a corporation, or what a city manager is to a city, or what a CAO, a county administrator office is to a county, a chief of staff is to an elected official. And it basically is the person at the top level of the organization that works underneath the council and oversees all of the departments of the tribe. It looks like now David's having technical difficulties. So I guess I'll talk while he's frozen in time there. I'll talk a little bit about Dishgamu. And Dishgamu comes, as I heard David saying earlier, from the Wiyot word for love. And the creation of the name of this community land trust was developed to really put love into this community that we all live. I appreciate all the comments on the side about technical difficulties coming from a reservation that has no fiber optic abilities and no broadband. It's funny to be on the other side of someone that's frozen. It's usually me that's frozen. But yes, we do need to increase fiber network in our community. So I'll give David a minute to come back. So the way that Dishgamu Humboldt began was really a collaboration that started between Cooperation Humboldt and the Wiyot tribe. As many of you may know, the Wiyot tribe has been working for a long time in a number of various projects locally, and Cooperation Humboldt had been working alongside of us on a number of those projects. One project that they worked on with us was food sovereignty. They've worked with us in creating access to traditional foods in our community, as well as just opening access to food as a whole in our community. We'd also been working together on, we did a lot of work on COVID-19 when COVID-19 first hit. Cooperation Humboldt and the Wiyot Tribe were both organizations operating in our community, and we had similar needs. You know, we had staff that was doing work in the community that couldn't stop. David had outreach programs going on, street outreach. I had elders that needed to have elders meals prepared. And if you all recall, at that time, there was no mask, there were no hand sanitizer, there were no gloves. There were a lot of things that just weren't available in our community. And Cooperation Humboldt and the Wiyot Tribe came together and basically shared resources in order to be able to help our staff work more safely in the community and the way that the work that we had to do. And I think we continued to develop our relationship through that. And Cooperation Humboldt has been supporting the tribe in spreading honor tax, and there's been quite a few adventures we've been on together. And so we like to say we're operating at the speed of trust. We've been working together and creating relationships that are deepening as we do more projects together. And what we found ourselves is that we were doing a lot of things in reaction to what was happening to us in the community. And we wanted to work on something that was more positive, that we were being more futuristic and creating things that the way that we wanted to happen instead of reacting to things that were happening at the time. Good. I see you're back, David.
I am back, Michelle. And y'all, thank you so much for your patience with us. I often say that I actually like that I live in a place where Mother Nature can still interrupt things. And but I also I was able to hear you, Michelle, and thank you for the kind words about our collaborations. And moving at the speed of trust, I really want to underscore. And that is because we know that we are in a climate crisis. It's not coming, it's here and getting worse. We know that we are in an economic crisis, and we know this, y'all. What we have is each other. And we'll get through this crisis and these developing crises together. And what we're going to now share with you is Michelle Vassel and the Wiyot Tribal Council and David Cobb and Cooperation Humboldt organizationally coming together to imagine proactively how to restore this land to the balance that existed before settler colonists came here. And I do want to really anchor that I know that I am an uninvited guest on Wiyot territory. And I know this, that my mama and my papa, that's rural Southern for grandmother and grandfather who helped to raise me, taught me if you're going to be a guest in somebody's home, act right. You know, and so what I am doing is authentically, transparently, and with dignity, but still humility, engaging the Wiyot tribe who have been here, as Ted Hernandez has taught me to understand, not for tens of thousands of years, but since time immemorial. The Wiyot tribe know how to be in right relationship with this bay, Ouija. They know how to be in right relationship with the Ocean, sure, in Wiyot. They know how to be in right relation with the forest and the two-leggeds and the four-leggeds and the finned here. So this is not me romanticizing anything. This is me saying I step into this space understanding that it was once in balance and it was abundant and that it was a vibrant food forest where literally to survive, all you had to do is engage in meaningful, productive activity, also known as labor, and there was enough for everyone. Oh, and by the way, just like my mama taught me, all you had to do is share. As long as you did your best and you shared, there's plenty to go around. So I believe, Michelle believes, that it is possible to return this land to that kind of balance. So before we get into the concretes and the technical parts of it, Michelle, I want to invite you any other kind of big picture framing before we get into Dishgamu specific?
I guess, I'll just add that, I grew up, he's talking about what he learned from his grandparents, and I learned from my grandparents that every day, like what you do every day is who you are. So if you go out and you garden every day, you're a gardener. If you go out and, if you go play piano every day, you're a pianist. If you, what you do is what you become. And I always learned also that what you do when you're working, you're praying with your hands, and everything you do, you need to do in a good way, or you're literally working into your work, whatever feelings that you have inside you. So if you're working with like negativity and hate and just anger or whatever, you're gonna inadvertently weave that into what you're doing, and that's what you're projecting into the world. And so when we decided to come up with the words for this is what we're intentionally saying. We're putting love into this community. We're caring about this community.
Michelle, you have me right on the verge of bursting into tears once again, because what we are doing is so powerful, it's so beautiful, and it's so real. So I am trying to pray with my hands with Michelle. So when I say that this is cutting edge, let me share with you what I mean by that. Because we're not trying to create something that is a, quote, competitive advantage to funders and like, oh, we're doing something special that we want to keep and hide and only exploit for ourselves so that our community can be great. I'm being really transparent here. We're copy left, right? We are sharing broadly with anybody and everybody, because we think that this needs to not only happen here, but also it needs to be replicated in thousands of communities across Turtle Island. What is that? It is an Indigenous-led community land trust. Now, a community land trust is a legal formation under Western law. Part of the challenge is that Western law basically protects property rights uber alles, and it does not actually codify human needs as rights. Never mind, Western law can't even conceive of the idea of community rights or earth rights, and deeper still, the truly decolonized way of looking at it is to say there are both rights and responsibilities that are reciprocal between the two-legged, the four-legged, the winged, and the finned, and that we're all supposed to actually be playing our proper role in relationship. You see, one thing that Michelle is teaching me is that it's even a mistake to talk about properly managing our forest, because we're in relationship with the forest. For example, Michelle, I know your husband, Joe. Does Joe manage you, or do you manage Joe, or are you in a relationship together?
Yes, we're in a relationship together. And
right?
We like to say we're captains of our own ships.
Yay. So the point is this. I'm inviting you listening to this to join, if you are also non-Indigenous, to join me in the discovery of decolonizing ourselves and thinking about being in right relationship in a reciprocal nature with Mother Earth, understanding that we do live in Western society with certain degrees of legal structures. So how are we trying to grapple with that and actually do this? Well, we're going to return this land to balance by engaging in creating a community land trust that will have the priorities of regenerative economic development and restoration ecology jobs and affordable housing. A community land trust is a legal, technical formation, right? But and almost all of the land trusts that you'll find out about typically engage in conservation easements. Yay, that! But there's a new development. It's less frequent, but it is starting to happen more and more, to use the community land trust for affordable housing. Yay, that! It is even more rare to find a truly tribal community land trust. The reason for that is that they don't need them, because if you're a federally recognized tribe, typically you're able to use federal trust law in order to sort of do those things. So tribes don't typically create community land trust. I'm going to stop and ask Michelle Vassel to weigh in, grade my papers, add anything about the existing framework that I may have missed.
So correct. So community land trusts you can find them in Indian country. There's some other folks that are doing that. However, for the most part, they're standalone 501c3s that aren't incorporated into the tribe. Because like he was saying, tribes don't have to do that because they can put land into trust through, putting it into federal trust land. What our community land trust is doing that's really different is creating a community land trust under tribal law. And it's also has this two prongs. On the one side, conservation of land, and on the other side, affordable housing. And so on the affordable housing side, how that works is it takes the land out of the picture, thereby making home ownership more affordable for people. If you go out and you buy a piece of land, or if you buy a piece of property, a house to live in, some of that money is on the actual house, the cost of buying the house. The other piece is the land. Traditionally, amongst Indian people across the continent, land ownership is not something that's not a traditional concept. This concept of owning the land and putting a picket fence around it is not. It's like conceptually like owning the air or owning the water that you can't. It's not something that you can own. It's land. And so we're trying to build that back into our community land trust, where we're taking that land ownership piece out, and it thereby makes the property more affordable for people to own.
In other words, as a lawyer, I want you to imagine, you can't own the airways. Good point, Emma. And Emanation, good to see you here. So the land would be held in trust by the Wiyot tribe, right? But the box that you might build on top of it, like the house that I am living in, and that my partner Ruthie and I are slowly buying from the bank, we're going to put this into the land trust so that the Wiyot tribe and the community land trust owns the land, right? They are stewarding the land, but we still own the box, right? So this is a new way of thinking. And in fact, I should say, this is a way to decolonize and decommodify land and get us back to an indigenous way of looking at it. And I want to give a hat tip to Chris Peters of the 7th Generation Fund for Indigenous Development, who reminds me, and I still remember this, it was back in 2004, whenever he was explaining to me the honor tax, which I got very excited about. And that was, he said, David, remember, you too and every other human being descend from indigenous peoples. There was a time when your ancestors were in right relationship with the land in which they were stewarding, right? And I see your question, Andrew, so keep those cards and letters coming. So my job is to figure out how to get back to that. And that's what we're doing legally. So Andrew asked, do the box owners pay rent, and who pays for the infrastructure? And that's the brilliance of it, Andrew. The question is, it depends on what the box is. For example, if it is just a straight up home that I own that I'm putting into the land trust, I actually own it, so I don't pay rent to myself. I actually own the box. And I'm responsible in this case for the infrastructure associated with it, because I have, in Western tradition, I have complete and total right to exclude, etc. I just don't own fee simple, right? But if we are talking about an affordable housing apartment complex, spoiler alert, Michelle and I are working up a 5 to 6 story apartment complex with laminated mass timber, which will sequester carbon, which will be designed to look like it's supposed to be here, because Wiyot people will be part of the rendering and the examination of it. In that case, Andrew, the owner would actually be the community land trust, which is 100% responsible for the infrastructure of that project. And then the individual boxes within it, you just have a typical tenancy for it. right? So Andrew, the point that I'm getting at is, Sequoia, hit me up. I will drop my way to get in touch with you. Hempcrete is literally something that Michelle and I have mused about out loud, and we will absolutely talk to builders all across the way. So the laminated mass timber excites us because it sequesters carbon and gives us a way to create sustainable forestry amongst our forests. But wait, there's even more cutting edge stuff. And that's because the legal formation of Dishgamu Humboldt will have 4 members, that the Wiyot Tribal Council has voted. And I believe that vote was unanimous, Michelle. Yes? I want you folks to really hone in on this for a minute. Let me legal geek out. I'm a lawyer, right? But what's really worth pointing out is the board of directors of Dishgamu, the Wiyot tribe has voted to take both the power and responsibility to designate 4 seats on that 7-person board of directors. Did you catch what I said? The tribe itself has designees. So it's just that they happen to be 4 Wiyot people that we like. The tribe organizationally has thrown down to say, this is us. That's 4 of the 7. Cooperation Humboldt's board of directors has voted to accept the power and responsibility to designate 1 member of that board of directors. Get this, Full Spectrum Capital Partners, people of wealth who are impact investors who are ponying up some money for this. Listen to this, 1 member of the board of directors. We have that 7th seat that's open. We are hoping that perhaps Humboldt Area Foundation might want to join that. If not, we'll find another community partner. But the point is, it won't be an individual. It will be an organizational relationship. So what we're describing is something that is an organizational commitment, because it's not just Michelle and David. We're friends. We love each other. We work great together. But it's deeper than that, y'all. It is that the Wiyot tribe, through its proper government and Cooperation Humboldt as a local organization and Full Spectrum Capital Partners, are making a commitment together. And for what that I mean, we don't just have a memorandum of understanding. We literally have a memorandum of commitment, because we're playing an infinite game with each other. In other words, life is a game, right? But here's the problem, that too often we're playing finite games. Finite, of course, is a game that has an ending, and all games have rules, right? But finite games, because you know that they have an ending, the rules are designed to say at the end of it, there is a winner and loser, right? And so that the rules work that way. But if you join me and Michelle into imagining that here in Humboldt, we want to play an infinite game together, the rules will be different. Yes, you can still be ahead or behind, but because the game never ends, there's never ultimately a winner or a loser. There's just, where are you in the game? Dishgamu Humboldt is a way to begin to think about and return back to playing an infinite game, not only with the other human beings we're with, but with the natural world. So that's, yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
I was going to say, David and I, we work in, different worlds, and we have different languages that we come from. And we often find that we have to translate each other's words for each other. And we have a reciprocal thing where he has shared things with me that I've learned from him, and he's shared things, or I've shared things with him that he's learned from me. But one of the things that he taught me that helped me really to understand other people's behavior, which sometimes I'm puzzled by, is he told me about a concept of transactional relationships, and that, oftentimes when you're working with others, they're only in it for that transaction. And, that's what we're trying to move away from, is we're working long-term, organizationally, but also with the other organizations we work with. We're building trust, we're building real relationships that's more than the actual transaction or the project. So if you can imagine that you're working on, in an economic development world, if you're working on a very specific, project to develop this one thing, the players come in, they develop it, they're out, what we're working on is building up that connection structure so that we're all continuing to work together into the future, not just for this transaction, but indefinitely.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. And thank you for lifting up, because I learned so much from Michelle, and it makes me feel good to know that she learns things from me. Because here's the thing, y'all, we are learning as we are teaching as we work, and learning as we lead. And so the point is that these so the projects are important, right? Like if you don't have projects, all you have is vision. So far, mostly what Michelle and I have been telling you is our vision, because that's what's driving us. We've also been talking about the priorities. Again, affordable housing, regenerative economic development, restoration ecology jobs. I now want to go into some of those projects, though, because one of the things that I think is worth sharing, Michelle, can you give us the 3 or 4 minute version of Kilowatt Island Return and how restoration ecology work came out of that practice?
So are you talking about place-based healing?
You got it.
So this is a word that I shared with David that he's learned, from my language. But so for Tuluwat, for the Wiyot people, Tuluwat is considered the center of the world. It's literally the place of creation in the Wiyot creation story. It is this place that is ceremonially significant. It also happens to be a place where there's a horrific massacre. And after that massacre, Wiyot people weren't allowed to be there. And there was, 100 years of work towards the rest, to the ability for Wiyot people to even be able to legally return to that island. But that work for Wiyot people, was 150 years long. But where I really saw that, change happen in this community was with Cheryl Seidner and her sister Leona and 2 other non-Indian people that one was a historian and one was related to a local church group that created the candlelight vigils on Woodley Island every year. And it was at those candlelight vigils that people came together every year in the darkness, to recognize this place and what had happened there, but also it was a space to vision what could happen in the future. And from those vigils, from that place, that space that was held in order to do something different, derived a group of people who wanted to change that and do something different. So Cheryl was able to come to our council at some point when there was a piece of land that was open for sale on the island. And we bought back this 1.5 acre piece of land that was, it was an environmental disaster site. It had been a dry dock boatyard for over 100 years. And they used chemicals in boat making, 100 years ago that aren't legal today. There was just a disaster there. I mean, it's hard to even imagine how bad it was if you didn't see it, and you see it now. But that work.
Michelle, I apologize, but I think that people need to understand. I knew it looked ugly. It was actually an EPA toxic site. It wasn't a quote,
it wasn't. You shouldn't be there. It was dangerous to be there.
It was dangerous to even be on Kilowatt Island. It was literally the Environmental Protection Agency had identified it as a hazardous toxic site.
Yes. So we, knowing full well, because we did the environmental phase 1 assessment before we bought it, we knew full well what we were getting into. But in Cheryl's mind, in the council's mind, even though we don't have any money, we didn't have a lot of, we don't have a casino, we don't have any, economic development that brings money into the tribe. They made a choice, regardless, to purchase that island because of the value of that place culturally and religiously. And so we did we did that. We purchased the 1.5 acres, and then we started the process of environmentally restoring it. And those people that came to those original, those candlelight vigils are the people who helped us during that time period to put on all the fundraisers and things necessary to buy the piece of property, B, to create, to be the initial workforce, the volunteer workforce to help us clean up that place, and C, to either attend, be part of, volunteer for all the fundraisers it took to come up with the money in order to restore that island. And that process of restoration, working shoulder to shoulder with these people in our community, really brought change in our community. It changed the way people saw the tribe. It changed the way people saw each other. We got a lot of local support from local businesses. We didn't have a barge, and we needed to get all this stuff off the island. A local business let us borrow their barge. We had this project to restore part of the shell mound that is on the northern side of the island. And in doing the shoring up, we needed shells, and a local oyster seafood folks donated their shells to us. So, those things, a combination of local businesses. And then we had to hire specialists for some of this work on the environmental restoration. It was outside the realm of volunteers' duties. So, we had to hire local specialists to do some of that work. And in doing so, again, it created these relationships. It changed the way we work together as a process. There's something powerful in coming together and working side by side to make something happen. And if you've been to the island, if you've seen it now, it is absolutely a completely different place than it was 15 years ago, when it was a disaster site, as David put it. And the tribe actually received, we're the first tribe to ever receive an EPA site reuse award from the United States EPA. But what I was explaining to David is that transformation, the ecological transformation, was powerful in that by healing this place, it really healed all the people that did the work and the process of doing that. It healed our community as a larger thing. Individual people that worked on this project are changed by it. Like, who thought 20 years ago that we could own most of the island? Who thought 20 years ago that if you looked at, if I go back and look, if I wasn't at that time, young 20-something-year-old, and I knew how much that was going to cost, I probably would have thought, oh my gosh, that's impossible. But, I was in fact mentored by people who were looking at, not just what can we do this year, not what can we do on this project, but what can we do for the rest of time. And what I saw on that island was, it was a bigger impact than just the work on that specific space. So by taking away the soil contamination, we took, contamination out of the water in Humboldt Bay, because every time the tide came in and every time the tide came out, this contamination was in the bay. By taking out the wall of marine batteries that was shoring up the north end of the island, imagine every day the tide came in, every day the tide came out, washing up and down those batteries, that changed the water quality in the bay. If you look at removing the Spartina on the island, by removing the Spartina, this to me was the most beautiful thing, because the tribe went out and replaced some of the Spartina, which is an invasive species, and it's actually prevalent all over the bay. We removed that Spartina, and we replaced it with some local plants that we'd gotten off of other local islands that were supposed to be there. And I really saw the power of nature in this, because yes, we did plant native plants on the island, but it really was nature itself that came back once we got the obstacle out of the way of those Spartina plants. So if you saw it just happen overnight, like all the stuff that's supposed to be there just came back. And with that plant life came the wildlife too. I don't know if how many of you know about how important the eelgrass is in our area, but Humboldt Bay has more eelgrass than any other bay in California, and it is absolutely imperative to shelter marine life when they're babies. It's like a marine nursery area. So by removing these invasive species, these other plant life came back, and then by having those plants there, it created that habitat for baby fishies, and I like the baby crabs. David always teases me because they're my favorite. I just love them. They're the cutest things on earth, and birds and things like that. And again, like this work, this environmental restoration work, it didn't just change the landscape of the land. And change of ownership didn't just owning the land, the tribe owning the land didn't just wasn't just a title transfer. It was a transformation of the place. And in doing so, we really transformed our entire community. It benefited everybody here. And we went from being, a city of Eureka that was known across the country, made headlines as a place called Murderville. We changed that to a place that was the first city to return land to a tribe without being, legally compelled to do so.
So, folks, I want y'all to just bask in that a moment, like the historic return and how the Wiyot tribe, and I want to say it again, the Wiyot tribe leading, but others of us following, working shoulder to shoulder to clean that contamination. And Murderville, right? The site of the historic massacre and the site of a world renewal ceremony that was brought back as a result of this. I mean, I'm on the verge of tears and I've told this story so many times, but we're turning a place of shame into back what it is supposed to be. And that's what we're saying, Jesse, that the city of Eureka literally returned Tuluwat Island legally to the Wiyot tribe. It was a 3-stage process. First, 1.5 acres the Wiyot bought on their own using the traditional Western legal situation. Frankly, they overpaid for it, right? Michelle, you know it, that the seller knew how badly you wanted it. And what they charge you for 1.5 acres, most of which in the mudflats?
It was $200,000. There's no electricity.
Well, I want you to think about that.
There's no electricity on the island at all. There's no fresh water. And it was the site of
it was a toxic site.
It's a toxic waste site.
But that's how desperately the Wiyot wanted it, because it was the center of the universe for them. So that is purchased. In the process of the cleanup, and I just want to name this, oh, by the way, the Wiyot didn't go and clean up their 1.5 acres, right? They went there in hazmat suits and just began to clean the island. And the city saw that. And Cheryl went back to then Mayor Peter LaValle and said, hey, remember when Albert James tried to do this back in the 1970s? You should give the whole thing back. And over the course of many years, there was a return of how many on the second phase, Michelle?
The first phase so we bought the 1.5 acres. The next was 40 acres on the north end of the island, and then we just were returned the 200 plus acres on the south part of the island.
So think of it as 3 phases. They purchased 1.5 acres. The second was 40 acres, but the city of Eureka had all these restrictions. You shall not do this. Here's the one. I still remember Cheryl saying, we will accept this because we need our center of the universe back. But the city of Eureka literally required the Wiyot to a restriction that said you will not put a casino here. And Cheryl, I still remember talking about, would you put a casino in St. Peter's Cathedral? Would you put a casino in the center of your sacred places? Of course, we're not going to put a casino on Tuluwat. But the point is, those restrictions were part of the agreement. The third phase, that last 200 and some odd acres, that's what's historic. in the history of the United States of America, Eureka, California is the first time that a municipality has returned land without any legal restrictions. That's not just David Cobb saying it. That's not just the North Coast Journal saying it. That's the Smithsonian Institution saying it. That's the Guardian saying it. I'm like, literally, this got worldwide recognition. The Wiyot tribe in the city of Eureka engaging in making land back real. But wait, there's even more, because I want you to imagine for a moment that process and that restoration ecology work that was done literally with bake sales and, like
taco sales, art auctions, concerts.
Now I want you to imagine integrated capital being put to work doing restoration ecology all across Wiyot ancestral territory. What do I mean by that? I mean, we are in conversation with people of wealth who are individuals, who are impact investors. That is to say, we want to invest serious money, millions of dollars in these kinds of projects, but we need to get some rate of return. Not the same rate that they can get in Wall Street, right? But they're willing to take a smaller rate of return over a longer period of time in order to facilitate this. Oh, but wait, there's even more, because we're talking with huge institutional funders, the California Endowment, the Novo Foundation, the Rice Family Foundation, and the Annenberg Foundation, a whole, literally, Michelle, how often are we talking to people who are interested in putting together this capital stack? So philanthropic money, which is, of course, gift money. And we are looking at foundations that are smaller foundations, and we're looking at 0% loans or only 0.5% loans, what are known as concessionary loans, and we're talking about impact investment money. So we're literally putting together a capital stack and a plan that would be about $100 million over 10 years to do both restoration ecology. By the way, we haven't even talked about sustainable forestry and the plans that we have there. In addition to that, multiple apartment complexes using urban infill in Eureka, in Arcata, in McKinleyville. But wait, there's even more, because we're also looking at some eco-villages, otherwise known, imagine, say, 5 to 7 acres of tiny homes that are actually completely car-free, so that we basically are recreating in modern times something that looks a lot more like a traditional Wiyot village. So all of these go ahead, Michelle.
I was going to add that if you can imagine, those of you that have kids, and the way our neighborhoods are set up today, all the houses are facing the street. And so when your kids go out and play with the other kids on your block, they're playing in the street. Imagine if you flip that and you put all your backyards together, and all the kids could then play in this green space that was combined, and you had shared parking, so that you didn't have to have, your kids would be more safer because they'd be enclosed in this green space that they could play in. So those are the kinds of things that we're working on, and we're really working on not just building green, but we're calling it deep green. So we're using, not only are we using green like energy, building in these passive energy systems that are less, that leave less of a carbon footprint, but also we are working on trying to build green. So the materials we use and the ways that we're building are also not contributing to, our carbon footprint. But also, the next level, the deep green piece is actually building green into our spaces. So when you're building an apartment complex, we're not looking at building a big cement square in the middle of, surrounded by a sidewalk, surrounded by streets, but we're going to have green spaces built into every place that we build. So we like to use the phrase, instead of paving paradise and putting in a parking lot, we're literally trying to build into the urban footprint that already exists. And we are we are taking a parking lot and building paradise. So we're trying to
Really
restore it to green.
we're reclaiming, right, paradise, because this place was it still is paradise, right? Let's be honest about that. Like, we live in a very special place, but we're going to reclaim these parking lots and return those parking lots to paradise. And so the point that I really am trying to make here is, yes, we have projects, and we have an incredible financial integrity team. Where we have like some of the real movers and shakers in Humboldt County that we're working with. I also want to lift up, we have a memorandum of understanding with Pacific Builders. And I like to say, Pacific Builders are a local company that literally renovated what I will call the crown jewel of Eureka's Old Town. Used to be known as the Carson Block Building. Now it's Northern Indian Health Service.
Northern California Indian Development Council.
Say it again, Michelle.
Northern California Indian Development Council, and it's beautiful. It's the most beautiful restoration I've ever seen.
It really is, those rounded, like, it's just, it's phenomenal. And Pacific Builders actually did that project. So we're working with Pacific Builders, but we're also in conversation with, and I want to lift up John Bartholomew, who is the Humboldt County Treasurer. He has agreed to serve on our financial integrity team. We have Ross Welch of the Arcata Economic Development Center, who is, of course, AEDC, one of the co-sponsors of this entity. But wait, there's more, because we also have Danny Kelly, who is the president of the Board of Trustees for College of the Redwoods and a business consultant with Edge Caliber. We have Peter Pennekamp, who is on the board of directors of the Co-Central Credit Union and former executive director of Humboldt Area Foundation. We have commitments from Kathy Moxon of Redwood Coast Rural Action. We just have a host of people who are not only cheerleading, but have said, when you need specific help on specific projects, we are your financial integrity team. We are putting together a new legal formation that has never existed before, as we talked about in the beginning, to do something that I don't think that has happened, which is, again, we're not creating something new so much as we're creating a new entity to remember how human beings used to live here, right? The Wiyot have always known this. We need, those of us who are guests need to learn from that and to be in right relationship with this land. Michelle, I know that we're coming to the end. Like, I think we've got about 15 minutes left in the session. So before, and I want to encourage folks, some of you have already been doing so, to use the chat to ask questions or engage in any conversation. Michelle, I'm wondering if you want to talk just a little bit about the work that you are doing with Indian Legal Services and how excited they are to be working with us on this process.
So we've actually engaged a couple different folks in trying to develop our legal framework. And, we were actually, Dave and I started off just trying to find somebody who's, it's always easier than recreating the wheel to go to someone else who's doing the same thing and ask them, hey, how'd you do this? And what we found is that we're like the only ones that have done anything like this. So we've met with a lot of native land trusts that are operating as 501c3s. We've talked to a number of other of cooperative of some community land trusts that really focused on housing, like the East Bay. Help me with the name. EBPREC.
Yeah, EBPREC stands for East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative.
I'm always terrible at remembering the whole name. But we've talked to them. We've talked to a number of different organizations who are doing similar things, but nobody's doing exactly this. So we pulled some law students from UCLA to do a research project for us, and up until today, they found nothing else exactly like this legally. So we're literally writing the legalese to go along with the work that we're doing in real time as we're doing it.
Thank you, Michelle. And I also thank you, Andrew, for your. I want to say this out loud. Andrew says, I like the concept of an alternative housing ownership modality. We need other options beyond single family houses on lots and mobile home parks. And Andrew, I'm not being sycophantic. You get it, right? Because what Michelle and I are saying is we don't expect Dishgamu Humboldt to be the only thing that's happening here. What we do believe is that there is a niche in our housing ecosystem, that this should be another way of doing it, right? And so we want to be value added to the way that housing can be done. I also want to point out yet another project that is a little less exciting and not quite as cutting edge, but still needs to happen. And that is, we are also looking at and imagining rehabilitating a bunch of the old Victorians, especially those in Eureka Arcata, that already exist. And Michelle, I know you're going to smirk at me because
He has a heart for the Victorians.
I do have a heart for the Victorians. I just love them so much. I live in one that I actually, I put a lot of, by the way, the realtor who sold it to me said, are you sure you want this? And I'm like, yes, because she is a beautiful faded lady. And I could see what it could become. Oh yes, Annalise, thank you. Right? It was like now, like Michelle, you've been here.
Yep.
Like it's a beautiful home, right? She just needed love and she needed some attention, right? She, just like any other lady, she needed to be loved and appreciated, and a fresh coat of paint. All to say this, y'all. Imagine Dishgamu Humboldt now going in and buying some of these, quote, distressed Victorians and not just fixing them up and flipping them. No. We're talking about buying them and putting them into affordable housing in perpetuity, either through the community land trust owning it or a housing cooperative where we can help other people actually do a condoization, if you will, of these Victorians. Because one of the things that I have discovered, and Michelle and others have taught me, is frankly, y'all, the scam that is federal funding for low-income tax credits and new market tax credits to do affordable housing. Michelle, tell us how affordable housing low-income tax credits basically work as it relates to affordable housing and for how long?
So basically, you get a loan, which is people invest into the creation of these low-income housing structures. You build it, and then when you rent out these spaces, you're repaying that loan with a federal tax incentive. So over the course of so many years, which I think it's usually around 30 years, these are used as low-income rentals. The total value of the property is, the people that invested in it are repaid by these federal tax credits coming in and paying into the system. And then at some point it's all paid off, and then everybody owns it, and it's just housing now.
Oh, when she says just housing, did you catch that? It's no longer affordable housing. Our federal tax dollars are used to subsidize the creation of affordable housing. Yay that. So far, so good, right? And for the first 20, 25, or 30 years, that's the typical amount of it, it has to be affordable housing. But tell us again, Michelle, at the end of that 30 years, what happens to that affordable housing unit?
It's just what it is then. It's no longer affordable housing. It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be. It can become just like, quote, market rate housing. So one of the things that makes, exactly, Kimberly, market rate housing, that's another thing that makes the Dishgamu project different. Oh, shoot. That makes the Dishgamu project different is that we are on the affordable housing component, and we are literally willing to write into the projects themselves affordable in perpetuity. So for those of you in government, city or county, looking at trying to find ways to meet your housing element, Dishgamu is a developer of a different kind. We're putting together capital stacks that will be able to build housing, and you as a city planner or a county planner can rest assured that you're not just kicking the can down the road, and that your the predecessor who will be the planner or the city manager in 30 years is going to have to do this all over again. We're making a guarantee to you that we'll put in writing in the contract affordable housing in perpetuity. So Michelle, we are nearing the end of our time together with these good folks. So I am going to I'll offer my concluding remarks and then turn it over to you, Michelle, for your final remarks. And it goes like this. Thank you. And I say thank you to whoever is occupying the chair that you're sitting in. Thank you for being here. We are excited whether you're here I'm in Jarajiji, also known as Eureka, whether you're coming to us from Wiyot traditional territory or anywhere in the world. Thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for imagining with us a process to engage in healing generational trauma by restoring the land to balance and by getting in right relationship with one another. Thank you. And if you are interested in learning more, I have dropped my personal email into the chat. I make myself available for conversation with anyone. Some of you I recognize in the chat. You've heard me say it before. I never turn down the opportunity to turn down an opportunity, and I always take the first meeting, right? So shoot me an email. We'll schedule an initial conversation. Let's figure out how to work together. And if you are not in traditional Wiyot ancestral territory and you want to imagine replicating this, call us. The pledge that Michelle and I have made is that we're not just doing it here. We want to make it easier for other people to replicate this basic process anywhere. Peace. I want you, you're on mute, Michelle. You're muted. Well, the muting, unfortunately, I don't know what that tells us. She cannot unmute. But Michelle, hearts, remember Dishgamu. Much love to you, Michelle. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your kindness. Michelle often says we put inspiration with perspiration. That's our secret recipe. We're praying with our hands. We invite you to pray with our hands as well. Thank you so very much. And again, great appreciation to the Small Business Development Corporation, to the Arcata Economic Development Corporation, to REDEC, to all the people who put together this amazing summit. Thank you so very much.